The morning of December 29, 2017 witnessed a horrific crime on a deserted road in Argentina. 20-year-old Fernando Pastor was found dead with 2 gunshot wounds. Initially, law enforcement suspected robbery as the motive, but the victim's personal belongings were left untouched. As the investigation progressed, increasingly shocking facts surfaced. Eventually, suspicion fell on the victim's girlfriend, Nahir Galarza. This story turned out to be more than just another crime. It was a true drama filled with toxic relationships, manipulation, and a high-profile trial that captured the attention of the entire country. But was justice truly served? And what drove a 19-year-old girl to become the youngest woman in Argentina's history to be sentenced to life imprisonment? Fernando Pastor was born in 1997 in the city of Entre Rios, Argentina, to the family of Gustavo Pastor and Silvia Mantiz. Despite his parents' divorce, the boy grew up surrounded by love and care, with his mother and father maintaining a warm relationship for the sake of him and his sister Carla. Fernando was a cheerful and kind young man who easily made friends and was always ready to help those in need. Reliable, loyal, caring, everyone considered him a model of true decency. Nahir Galarza was born a year later, in 1998, into the family of influential police official Marcelo Galarza and former police officer Amina Krau. Unlike Fernando, she was allowed practically everything. Her mother indulged her daughter's whims and even approved of her bad behavior. Her father was an unquestionable authority figure for Nahir. From an early age, the girl was accustomed to manipulating those around her to get what she wanted at any cost. At school, she was one of the most popular students, beautiful, self-confident, but arrogant and cruel to those she considered beneath her. These two, so different, found themselves in a relationship that led to tragedy. Fernando and Nahir started dating as teenagers. Initially, their relationship seemed like a typical teenage infatuation, but soon it took on much darker overtones. Fernando was head over heels in love and willing to do anything for Nahir, while she never took him seriously. She cheated on him, invited other guys over, and kept him emotionally hooked, exploiting his devotion. Despite the betrayals and humiliation, Fernando continued to endure, hoping she would change. But the more he realized the toxicity of their relationship, the harder Nahir tried to keep him. She monitored his phone, interrogated him about who he was communicating with, accused him of infidelity, although she herself continued to see others. When Fernando tried to distance himself, Nahir threw tantrums, threatened him, and used her police officer father as leverage. On December 25, 2017, Fernando went to a nightclub with friends. Suddenly he saw Nahir kissing another man. It wasn't just a random kiss, it was a public humiliation. Unable to take it, Fernando approached her and demanded an explanation. But instead of defusing the situation, Nahir lashed out at him with curses. Her friend Sol Martinez joined in, punching Fernando in the face. Nahir laughed loudly, insulted him, humiliated him in front of everyone. Humiliated and devastated, Fernando left the club, not yet realizing it was his last night. Emotionally and physically drained after the ordeal at the club, Fernando shared his pain with friends. He was most hurt not only by Nahir's infidelity, but also by her cruel words about his family, whom he loved so much. It was that night that he finally realized he could no longer tolerate her toxic behavior. His friends urged him to decisively break up with Nahir forever. Filled with new determination, he began making plans for the future. He enrolled in a university in another city, hoping to leave behind the chaos, manipulation and suffering these relationships had brought him. He acted cautiously, understanding how unpredictable and possessive Nahir could be. But his desire to leave was the last straw for her. She couldn't let him escape her control, couldn't lose her power over him. If Fernando wouldn't be with her, then he wouldn't be with anyone. On December 28, 2017, Fernando, exhausted from their endless quarrels, agreed to meet Nahir for the last time. She begged him for a date, assuring him that she just wanted to spend one more night with him before parting. He didn't know that this decision would prove fatal. He didn't know that for Nahir, this meeting wasn't a farewell, but a death sentence. At the Galarza house, everything was as usual. They spent a few hours together. According to some reports, they even tried to rekindle intimacy. Maybe Fernando hoped they could part on good terms. But Nahir had a different plan in mind. If she couldn't have him, then no one could. If he left, he would leave forever. On the morning of December 29, 2017, Fernando was about to leave. He finally felt he was breaking the chains Nahir had shackled him with for so many years. But she stopped him. "Take me to Grandma's," she asked. A simple request, he saw no reason to refuse. But it was his last ride. Fernando got on his motorcycle, Nahir settled behind him. In her pocket was a gun, her father's service weapon. Tension hung in the air, filled with unspoken words. Fernando had no idea that behind him sat not his ex-girlfriend, but his future killer. When they got to the deserted road, Nahir tapped him on the shoulder. "Stop," she ordered. Fernando trusted her, suspected nothing. He slowed down on the roadside, turned to her, waiting for an explanation. But instead of words, Nahir pulled out the gun and shot him in the back. The bullet went right through, knocking him off balance. Fernando fell to the ground, wounded, stunned, but still alive. He tried to move, to understand what had happened. But Nahir gave him no chance. She walked up close, aimed the gun and shot him in the head point blank. Fernando was dead. After committing the act, Nahir didn't panic. She didn't cry or repent. She coldly leaned over the body, trying to find the shell casings to get rid of the evidence. She found one, but the other rolled into the grass. This mistake would later become key evidence against her. At that moment, a taxi driver passed by. He noticed a girl leaning over someone on the ground. But he didn't think much of it and drove on. If he had stopped, maybe this story would have had a different ending. But the truth always comes out. And soon the whole world would learn the name Nahir Galarza, the youngest woman in Argentina's history to be sentenced to life in prison. After shooting Fernando, Nahir Galarza acted as if nothing had happened. At 5:22 a.m., surveillance cameras captured her walking home, calm, without trembling or tears. Just strolling down the street as if everything was fine. Returning home, she put the gun back, took a shower and went to sleep without any signs of distress. Early in the morning of December 29, 2017, the city of Gualeguaychú woke up in shock. Fernando was found dead next to his motorcycle. 2 shots, premeditated murder. The police initially assumed it was a robbery, but something didn't add up. His wallet, phone, money, everything was in place. The motorcycle stood upright with no signs of a fall. No struggle, no signs of resistance. This wasn't a random crime, it was personal, planned, cold-blooded murder. When news of Fernando's death spread through the city, one name was on everyone's lips, Nahir Galarza. Their toxic relationship was an open secret. Fernando's friends knew she controlled him, humiliated him, threatened him. Now the police had a lead. Nahir was called in for questioning. While she was being interviewed at the police station, a farewell message to Fernando appeared on her social media page. "Love of my life, I will miss you." But in the interrogation room, it was a completely different Nahir, emotionless, without tears or remorse. She talked about Fernando's death as if discussing the weather. Investigators were struck by her indifference, but there was more. She outright denied they had a serious relationship. However, the police had dozens of messages, photos, witnesses who knew the truth. Nahir was trying to save her skin. And when the pressure became too much, she resorted to extreme measures. At first she denied everything. Then, when the evidence became too obvious, she remembered that she did shoot him after all. But she claimed it was self-defense. However, this version didn't match the evidence. The shots were aimed, not accidental. Traces at the crime scene showed that Fernando wasn't attacking. Most importantly, after the murder Nahir didn't call the police or ask for help. She just went home as if nothing had happened. And this became her fatal mistake. The taxi driver who passed by gave testimony. He saw a girl leaning over a body. She was looking for shell casings, trying to hide evidence. She wasn't a victim, she was a killer. Nahir Galarza, young, beautiful, popular, turned out to be a ruthless murderer. She thought she could lie, manipulate, escape punishment. But the truth came out anyway. And ahead of her awaited a trial that would change her life forever. As well as the life of Fernando's family, who lost their beloved son. That night, it wasn't just a young man who died, a dream of justice, of love, of a normal life died too. But was justice served? Did Nahir still have a chance to wriggle out of it? The random taxi driver who became a key witness confirmed, he saw a girl leaning over a body. Surveillance cameras captured Nahir calmly walking home at 5:22 a.m., without panic or tears. Investigators found a shell casing she missed. Fernando's friends told of years of his suffering, of her manipulation, cruelty, unrestrained jealousy. The police no longer had any doubts, this wasn't self-defense, it was a planned murder. Her father, a high-ranking police official, quickly used his connections. The country's best lawyers took on the case. Their strategy was to portray Nahir not as a murderer, but as a victim of domestic violence. They claimed that Fernando abused her, that the shooting was a desperate act of self-defense. They showed photos of her bruises, actually received during hockey practice, but presented them as evidence of abuse. And then the courtroom turned into a real theater. Who was the victim here, and who was the predator? Through tears, Nahir recounted how Fernando allegedly tormented her, how that fateful night he forcibly put her on his motorcycle, attacked her, and she defended herself. She played the role of a frightened girl driven to despair by abuse. But her story began to fall apart. Fernando's friends told how Nahir would throw jealous fits, beat him, follow him. He himself said he was afraid of her, that he wanted to break this toxic cycle. And then a psychologist testified, one Nahir's own defense had brought in. And he made a shocking statement: Nahir wasn't a victim, she was a manipulator, a narcissist, a person used to getting what she wanted at any cost. At that moment, her defense shattered. Even crowds of protesters from feminist organizations who called her a victim of male could no longer influence the course of events. The evidence was too undeniable. The judges didn't believe in self-defense, they saw only cold calculation and ruthless murder. Nahir Galarza was sentenced to life imprisonment, becoming the youngest woman in Argentina's history to receive such a severe sentence. But could this bring Fernando back? Could it heal his family's wounds? No, but it was justice. The Nahir case forced Argentina to talk about the problem of domestic But another question arose: can a man be a victim of relationship? How often do toxic relationships lead to tragedy? And how many more Nahirs remain unpunished? This case forced a rethinking of many stereotypes, but most terrifying of all, it proved that love can be deadly. No matter how skillfully Nahir constructed her version of events, the truth about her crime could not remain hidden. On July 3, 2018, a stifling silence reigned in the courtroom of the city of Gualeguaychú as the judge read out the verdict. After weeks of testimony, forensic examinations, and contradictory statements, Nahir Galarza was found guilty of premeditated murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, becoming, at 19, the youngest woman in Argentina's history to receive such a term. For the family of Fernando Pastor, this verdict brought only partial relief. They had gone through months of grueling grief while simultaneously battling public pressure, the burden of the trial, and Nahir's attempts to portray their son as the aggressor. Yes, justice prevailed, but no sentence could bring their son back to them. As they left the courtroom, Fernando's parents thanked the lawyers and everyone who fought for the truth. They promised to keep the memory of their boy alive. The Nahir Galarza trial divided Argentine society. All sides closely followed every twist and turn of the case. Her face never left TV screens and newspaper pages. Some saw her as a ruthless killer, others as a victim of unfair condemnation. Society split into two camps. The first demanded severe punishment for the brutal murder, the second insisted it was self-defense and the justice system had been too harsh on the girl. But whatever theories were constructed, the facts spoke for themselves. The family of Fernando Pastor lost not only a beloved son, but the opportunity to see who he could have become in the future. Every piece of evidence, every photograph presented in court, was a reminder of an irreversible loss. But the tragedy didn't touch only them. Marcelo Galarza, Nahir's father, an influential police official, lost everything: his reputation, career, family, everything was destroyed by his daughter's verdict. In a desperate attempt to avoid punishment, Nahir even accused him of committing the murder, but the court dismissed this version as yet another manipulation. This trial exposed not only the horrific truth about the crime, but also the destructive power of toxic relationships, abuse of power and privilege. The case became a painful reminder of what relationships can lead to: manipulation, control, psychological pressure. All of this can end in tragedy. This case made society reflect on how privilege and connections can influence the justice system. Don't we need mechanisms capable of protecting people from toxic partners? Why is the problem of domestic violence not just about women, but men too? Fernando Pastor wasn't just a victim, he was a young man with dreams, plans, a life that was cut short too soon. His story is a call to action, a reminder of the importance of justice. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.